Don't use Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator when you're first starting. Rich, what did you just say? I can't believe I said it neither, but listen, my name is Rich and I am a full-time entrepreneur. I've been doing this since 2014 and I've been a graphic designer since 2003. And when I first started off, I used Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, and I used that for years and years. I even got my bachelor's in graphic design, and I even learned that Adobe products are really industry standard. And if you give me a few seconds to let me explain myself, but by the end of this, I will let you know why you should transition to Photoshop over time as well. Alright, so for the most part, I use design softwares for t-shirt designs and some e-com based things such as website banners, social media ads, and so on. And over the past few months, I've been posting a lot about Kiddo.com, and let me show you exactly why this right here is better to use than Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. First and foremost is going to be the learning curve. It is way easier to jump in and already get started, especially day one and hour one, the first hour. When it comes to Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, it's so intimidating to most people that they really just give up on the whole thought of even becoming a designer itself. Now, back in my day in 2003, it was also even harder to learn Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator, but fortunately, I was a lot younger, so I really had that drive in me to learn how to use it. And back in that day, there was really no YouTube videos or video instructionals around to learn how to use it. We had photos and we had text, and we literally had to read it like a manual. But nowadays, it's really easy to use something like Kiddo.com and really just jump in and already get going. It's so easy to change text and add a drop shadow. It's really easy to go ahead and get started, and you can already start being creative. Now, of course, there's always going to be pros and cons to using either a software like Kiddo.com or going with Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator. But we've been using this for one of our clothing brands, After Hours, and for 90% of the designs, it's helped us make money a whole lot faster, and it's easier for me to teach people on our team how to use this instead of using Adobe Photoshop. It's just been such a quicker process. Now, reason number 2. So check it out. This is Adobe Photoshop. When you have it pulled up, and if you didn't really train yourself to be creative to begin with, if you didn't do any type of product research, and you don't really have any ideas going on, it's hard to get going. Like, go ahead and cue the cricket sounds, because all you're going to have at the moment is a blank canvas. Now, this is the true artist way of get going and making something truly creative and unique to your own, because you have a blank canvas and you have something that you're supposed to work on and create yourself. But for me, this has literally been a creator's block. It's hard for me to get going. And when I started using something like this, it became a lot easier for me to get going. I can use different templates for different ideas, and it's easier for me to create something out of something that was already created. Now, the problem is I'm gonna get a lot of slack off of this from true Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and true designers who use softwares like that. And there's always some kind of battle between it. Like, a lot of people who are pro Photoshop are very anti Kiddo.com, but I used to be that way too. And I had to accept the fact that these softwares and these websites can actually help me be more proficient with my time. It's a lot easier for me to come on here, say, you know what, this Earth guy is pretty dope. I'm gonna click on this right here. I'm gonna type in my brand name, After Hours. I'm gonna type in brand right here. And do you see how it already turns into the shape that I need it to be? And right here, it's really easy for me to scale this up, and it is vector based, so I'm not gonna lose any type of quality. Gonna move this guy back down here. I mean, I can pretty much do whatever I want with this guy, right? Too big. Let's make him a little bit smaller. Let's just go ahead and move him right in the center. And then see, when I was looking at this template over here, I actually like these little stars. So I'm gonna click Control Copy, and I'm gonna come back to this template and click Control Paste. And now check it out. This right here, you see how it's behind all of these layers? I'm gonna right click on it and then click to front. And now I have it in front of everything. And that is going to be reason number 3 why I suggest starting off with something like Kiddo.com, because it's less intimidating, and at the same time, it's going to teach you some of the same principles that you're going to have to use in something like Photoshop or Illustrator, which is going to be layers. And layers is a very important part of design. And once you really understand something so simple as clicking right click and going to the back, and right click to the front, clicking layers and moving these things right here around, whenever you jump into Photoshop and Illustrator, you're gonna really understand some of the tools that was basically the same on Kittle.com. For someone who is younger and is struggling to learn and want to move a whole lot quicker, it's easier to jump into something like this. And once you get familiar with it, it's gonna be pretty much a stepping stool into getting into a more advanced program. But at the same time, I'm already using these advanced programs and I'm going backwards because these programs help me be even more creative, even though these are not my original designs. It helps me get my brain flowing. It helps me get my creative genes flowing, if I even have any. But the thing is, it just helps me get going a whole lot faster, and it's a lot more encouraging. Now, here are 2 more reasons why I like using Kittle.com. Because when it comes to something like Photoshop or Illustrator, they do have elements and they do have shapes and whatnot, but they don't necessarily have things that are a little bit more in style. For example, I told you I like these stars right here. I can type in star and I see a whole bunch of different types of star elements that I would like this one right here. If I go ahead and click on that, I can add it, and then I can keep on adding more and more. Now with Photoshop and Illustrator, you can download additional elements and add it in, or you can find it yourself, create it, copy and paste it over. But when it's already here for you, it's easier for you to just go ahead and use it. It just blocks out a few of the different steps. That way you're already ahead of the game. And now here's another thing that I do like. You can do this in Illustrator, but there are some extra steps to create everything into a different color. For example, if I select everything by clicking Control All, and you see I have this one color right here. Now I see all the different document colors. So I see all the different colors that are already being used in this design. So for example, this is the same color green that's on this earth and this little lightning bolt. So I can go ahead and change this to green, or I can change this to that same cream color as the other stars. So for example, I can click on this star right here and I can click object color, and I see all of the different colors that's already being used on here. So I don't have to sit here and use the eyedropper tool like on Photoshop or Illustrator and select the color that I actually want. It's already on here. Now don't get me wrong, this is something that you can do in Photoshop and Illustrator, but it's just not as simple. That's a step that you still have to look up a tutorial for real quick, and then you understand those steps, and then it comes into your arsenal of keywords and shortcuts that you can use at a future time. Now when it comes to something like Kittle, it's just obvious what it's being used for. Everything that you can do on here, you can do in Photoshop and Illustrator. I'm just gonna be straightforward with that. But my favorite part is going to be these templates. It's just easier for me to get going. I don't know how many times I gotta say that, but it's easier for me to get going when I have something to already work off of. Somebody already built the foundation for me, and then I can move things around. Now here's one other thing that I do like about Kittle. I have been using this mockup button a lot more than I expected it, because even though in Photoshop you can have your own set of mockups and you can already open it up and put it to the side and create the mockup yourself, but it's been so easy for me to just click mockup real quick, and just like that, it's on a mockup, and I can just see if this is something that we like, and then I can just go ahead and change the colors real quick and then see what color we want to get it printed on. Use the eyedropper tool, see if we can select the color of the t-shirt, find a similar style color t-shirt, and then, you know, that even saves us in the printing aspect, because now we don't have to print this pink color. We just make it see-through, or we actually use the t-shirt's color for this right here. And then we can also download this mockup if we really wanted to use it, and that just makes everything a little bit easier. So that right there is Kittle.com. If you do want to give this a try, 30-day free trial for the pro plan. All you have to do is type in HUSTLEJULY, and you have 7 days from the time this video is posted to use that code. The link for that will also be down below. But let's get real here. I do recommend getting into Photoshop and Illustrator over time. But if you've already opened up the software a few times and you had a hard time getting going, I recommend trying something like this out, because it's going to decrease the learning curve and it's going to encourage you to be a little bit more creative, because now you have ideas to run with and you can go from start to finish and create a few different projects. And then now you are a lot more motivated to get back into something like Photoshop and Illustrator. At the end of the day, I still use it myself. It's always going to be a core of the design process itself. Sometimes I even download the files from Kittle.com and bring it back onto Illustrator and then make my final touches on there. At the end of the day, Photoshop and Illustrator will always give you the ultimate creative control. You have 100% creative control on there, but if you don't have any inspiration to start with, Kiddo.com is going to be a great place for you. I'm not necessarily saying don't use Photoshop, don't use Illustrator, because that would be weird, because I definitely use it. Just be a little bit more open to everything else. I used to be the same way. Only use Photoshop, only use Illustrator. But when you get a new arsenal of tools and start adapting to the new age of how things are being done, you start advancing a little bit more and you start understanding why over time things change. Just like how AI is coming along. For example, AI is not necessarily replacing designers. Designers who are using AI are the ones who are replacing designers. I don't know what that had to do with everything, but I hope that makes sense. If you enjoyed this video, comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you like best about using Kiddo.com, and make sure you use the link, and I'll see you next time.